Hello and welcome to Power to the People with me, Graeme Pryce. Well, it seems we may have slightly underestimated Labour's PR skills after all. After weeks of suspicion, suspense and sheer nonsense, Rachel Reeves came out yesterday and surprised everybody by delivering what could arguably be called the most sensible and realistic budget of the last 15 years. The Conservative Party basically spent their last few months in office metaphorically kicking every UK citizen in the balls and laughing at them by deliberately attempting to salt the earth and leave Labour with as many problems as possible. That's how much they cared about the British people. Thankfully, the Conservative Party, especially then, mostly consisted of people too rich and greedy to give a toss about anything, as long as they were, still making money. People so incompetent they've probably accidentally wiped their arse with a toothbrush and stabbed themselves in the eye with a spoon at breakfast more than once. And people that intended to just walk away from the Tory party as soon as they lost the election anyway. So, with that in mind, maybe it isn't too surprising that Rachel Reeves seems to have managed to pull the cat out the bag and blindsided not just the Tories but their client media as well. That hasn't stopped the worst culprits from practically claiming that the sky is falling in because some rich people might have to pay, a bit more tax or, maybe pay the lowest employees a little bit more wages, of course. And GBBs, has literally asked Liz Truss her opinion, along with a few other propaganda sources that have the piss-taking arrogance to call themselves news outlets. But that's the UK for you, isn't it? Where black is white if Nigel Farage says so, and up is down if it's printed on the front page of the Daily Mail. And GBBs spends every day reporting on how shit smells of roses. Anyway, let's have a quick look at a few of the key announcements and I'll give you my opinion right after this. Hey, sorry to interrupt, just a quick interjection. The best way to help the channel and beat the algorithms is to hit the like button, leave a comment when we're done and subscribe if you haven't already. If you really want to help the channel, then hit the join button below or make a donation through PayPal or buy me a coffee. The links are in the description box. It's all very much appreciated indeed. Thank you. National insurance is set to rise by 15% before April of next year, which they say will raise 25 billion. Okay. I think we knew that they were going to have to raise some money somewhere if they intend to turn us back into a progressive nation instead of a drab, depressed, deprived, grey Tory shithole. Fair enough. They're going to increase personal tax thresholds on income tax and national insurance. And they say this avoids dragging people into higher tax bands. But it's not really my area of expertise, to be honest. If you want to make a comment about it, you go ahead and tell me if I'm wrong about it. They're raising capital gains tax, though I don't think that will surprise anybody. And they're extending a freeze on the threshold for inheritance tax to 2030, allowing £325,000 to be inherited tax-free. If you've just inherited £325,000, you're in a very different boat to me, mate. And you've got a paddle to get you out of that hallowed creek. The minimum wage is rising to £12.21, which is still a bit shit, in my opinion. I think £15 would have been better, but it's certainly an improvement, and it's more than the Tories' client media were saying it would be. The usual knobhead companies that report profits in the hundreds of millions or even billions every year are whining that paying their lowest ranking but often hardest working employees literally a few more pence on the hour will ruin them, obviously. GBBs, hosting exclusively people that have that view and pretty much nobody else today, you might notice. Alcohol and tobacco were nothing surprising, really. we continue the slow march towards a society where only rich people can afford a night in the local pub. And while I totally understand the virtue signalling behind continually hiking the price of tobacco, I don't think it's very fair. But it isn't a surprise, at least, and it could have been much more. I think they need to take those horrific pictures of diseased feet and withered teeth off tobacco products. You don't see a picture of an obese kid on every McDonald's Happy Meal box, do you? Or a picture of an ugly kid with a big veiny misshapen head saying, "This is what happens if you drink alcohol while pregnant," on every bottle of Glen's vodka, do you? Anyway, there was a 1p cut on the duty of draft beer, which was one of the few things that the Tories seem to be quite pleased with, strangely enough. Probably because a lot of them haven't been fucking sober since 2004. Reeves made the politically tricky decision to keep the freeze on fuel duty, which was not what a lot of the right-wing tabloids had expected or been lying about in the run-up. But remember, Labour know that if they end that freeze, the Tories and the client media would immediately set about calling it a tax on working people. And Labour are quite desperate to avoid that. Everybody on the right, everybody on the Corbyn team or the Never Starmer side of the left, and all of the idiots, reform voters and Russian bots had done their level best to implant the idea that this would be an austerity budget. And it really isn't. So, fuck you, all the naysayers. Apparently they're not all the same, after all, are they? There were definitely a few measures that were designed to be performative in suggesting that Labour are taking from those with the broadest shoulders. And they have fulfilled a manifesto claim by introducing a tax on private schools from 2025. Sorry, Meredith, but it looks like Little Darkwing School might have to close the croquet court. What a fucking shame. Never mind. Reeves also seems to particularly enjoy taking a little dig at Richie's son twat by delighting in informing him that raises on the tax on private flights will be taking quite a hike, resulting in it likely costing an extra £450 for rich wankers like him to avoid having to mix with the plebs while unnecessarily flying around the UK on private jets. Well done, Rachel. Quite pleased with that one. The education system is going to see a 19% increase in real terms funding, including £1.4 billion to rebuild the schools that the Tories had allowed to fall into near dereliction in the last 14 years. It seems quite good, although £1.4 billion isn't as large an amount as it sounds. Let's see how it's actually spent and who gets the contracts to rebuild the next schools, eh? See if it's people who are, close friends with people who are high up in the Labour Party. She did announce a £300 million increase in maintenance funding for schools, though, and the same for further education, which is quite good. We certainly wouldn't have gotten that from the Tories. Right-wing leaders depend on a preponderance of the undereducated voting for them, don't they? Donald Trump said he loves the uneducated, remember? As for the NHS, she announced a £22.6 billion increase in day-to-day health budget and £3.1 billion increase in the capital budget. Again, it's better than what the Tories would have given. I'm prepared to wait and see what the people who actually work in the NHS say about it, though. 22 billion sounds like a huge amount of money, but it's whether it's actually spent in the right way, isn't it? Whether it improves the working conditions of staff and reduces waiting times, that is the most important. Isn't it, mate? They've announced that they're going to spend $5 billion to increase affordable house building, which is a lot compared to the smoke and mirrors sham that the Tories endorsed for 14 years, while never once meeting any of their house building targets. It remains to be seen if Labour can meet theirs, of course, but I suspect they actually want to try. A bit harder than the damn Tories did anyway. The £2 bus fare thing is going up to £3, which, of course, a lot of the right-wing media have jumped on, because that is one thing that they can say that the Tories did that was quite decent, which Labour are ruining. What they are mostly failing to address, or even mention, is that the Tories plan to end the measure entirely. Whereas now, they will continue to be able to charge no more than £3 onwards into the end of 2025. I don't know about you, but I'm alright with paying an extra £1 on the bus. It's on a few occasions I don't mind shelling out an extra £1. There was an increase in public spending, but it was quite small and unremarkable really, but it's good, obviously. And a further £2.9 billion on defence, which I'm sure will surprise nobody with the state of the world these days. There's an additional 1.3 for additional grant funding for local government, including £600 million for social care. £600 million isn't anywhere near enough. That figure should have been way, way higher than that. The 1.3 billion, well, it's more than the Tories would have given, but the whole premise of these grants is flawed. The Tories invented this local grant thing as a way to absolve blame for the fact that their welfare system often left people without adequate means to support themselves, often deliberately and sometimes punitively. This wouldn't be needed at all if that money was just spent on operating benefits. The council wouldn't need extra funds to stop people falling into utter destitution, literally starving, being unable to pay their rent, or actually sitting in the dark with no electricity and heating in the middle of winter, if universal credit and other benefits weren't a pathetic joke compared to the basic cost of having an even average standard of life in the UK that they've created. Maybe not Labour, but the Tories certainly created. There actually wasn't much mention of welfare other than something vague about cracking down on fraudsters and informing us that benefits would rise with inflation next year, which is good, I suppose. And yes, that rise will be more than £1.50. Don't like to say I told you so, but, you know. They're keeping the Tories' idea of being able to go into people's bank accounts to root out benefit fraud as well, though, which I'm seriously concerned about for many reasons. But that's probably something for another video. I'm also a bit concerned about this mention even of welfare fraud. Because welfare fraud is at a particular low at the moment. Anyway, and I'm hoping that this was just a bit of red meat to throw to the kind of right-wing, knuckle-dragging, hypocritical cockshafts that think unemployed people should literally just live under a bridge and eat dog shit and be grateful that they're allowed to do that, lest they be labelled scroungers by the Daily Mail. And time will tell, won't it? Or maybe Liz Kendall could tell, but she doesn't seem to have that much to say about what our welfare policies are going to be going forward just yet. There was no mention of ending the two-child policy for family allowance, so it looks like that's another Tory disgrace of a policy that Labour have decided to keep for another year at least. But there was a doubling of the funds for free breakfast clubs right across the country. I suppose that's something, but it's not exactly great, is it? Now those children who live in poverty will at least get, slice of toast or two in the morning before the lessons start. I might get fuck all else for the rest of the day though. Thank you for watching if you've gotten this far. I think the biggest takeaway for me is that it just all seemed quite boring and standard. After 14 years of every budget being a compendium of lies and bullshit, an excuse to funnel more money into the pockets of the already obscene, obese and greedy, or just a farce of monumentally incompetent proportions, it was kind of nice to see a budget that we can broadly say seemed to be designed to make things a bit better for nearly everyone, instead of just the people who give money to the Tories or vote for them. Of course, the media in this country is owned by the people that told you to vote for Cameron, then told you to vote for Brexit, then told you to vote for Theresa May, then told you to vote for Boris Johnson, then told you it was okay to vote for, Liz Truss. Well, maybe not vote for, but support Liz Truss. Then they told you, Rishi Sunak was going to steady the ship. Well, they're all trying their level best to convince their stump-headed, flag-waving, crayon-munching twatwits that buy their bullshit papers and watch their bullshit news channels that this is the worst budget in history. The end is nigh. Despite the Tories literally delivering the actual worst budget in history a couple of years back when Liz Truss was in office. Don't read them. Don't watch them. Fuck them. If you want to know what Labour are doing, ask Labour, rather than asking people who make no secret of the fact that they absolutely hate Labour and have a long history of deceiving you about everything Labour have ever done or said. Just a thought. I've already done the whole like and subscribe thing, so I won't repeat myself. But if you want to help the channel a bit further, then hit the join button for memberships, or there are links to Patreon, or if you just want to make a one-off donation, there's the Buy Me a Coffee page in the descriptions box. It helps loads and it's super appreciated. Now for once, that is all I have to say about the budget anyway, but there's a lot more I intend to say on other days. Ta-ra-la. By delivering what could arguably be called the most sensible and realistic budget for the last 15 years. The Conservative Party, the Conservative Party, that's with a B, not a P. And you probably wouldn't have even noticed, but I'd have known that I said the Conservative Party, not the Conservative Party. It's just not okay.